Greetings, everybody. We'll just give you a couple heartbeats to allow the participants to join into the meeting. My name is Shane Downey. I'm Vice President of Government Relations with GBTA. Thank you so much for attending and joining the mid-year virtual summit. We all clearly wish we were together in person and doing this, but you know, if we can't be there together, this is the next best thing, or maybe the third best thing, I'm not sure which. So with that, welcome to the GBTA Mid-Year Summit and Annual Business Meeting Session, the innovation and evolution of virtual payments. We'll run through some housekeeping clips here. All registrant microphones and videos will not be enabled. Please place your questions in the Q&A box. These will be answered if time permits after the webinar, if time permits, or potentially after the webinar via email. Remember to keep your event hub handy. This is your gateway to all of the different sessions today. And now, a word from this session's sponsor, Southwest Airlines Business, Susie Peterson, Senior Director, Operations. Susie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shane. We are thrilled to be sponsoring GBTA's Mid-Year Summit and Annual Business Meeting, especially to be a part of the portion that is looking ahead to the future of business travel. Just like GBTA and your respective organization, Southwest Airlines is focused on the future of business with our customers and partners in mind with every step we take. At Southwest Airlines, we are hyper-focused on a channel of choice strategy with the addition of our Sabre partnership going live on Monday. Focused on sustainability, we are recently partnered with our GBTA friends on the collaboration series on this. And you will have also noticed, hopefully, that we have grown our cities by more than 20 dots over the map in the past year. As we celebrate our 50th anniversary this year, we want to thank every one of you for being a part of the travel industry's success and recovery from COVID. Thank you guys so much for being here today and for your support of GBTA and Southwest Airlines. And we look forward to another 50 years.
Thank you so much, Susie. And now let me introduce our speakers. Today we have joining us Julianne Pless, Kerry Fett, and Diane Lovett. Julianne.
Thank you, Shane. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. On behalf of the Payment Solutions Committee, Diane, Kerry and I welcome you to the GBTA Mid-Year Virtual Summit. Today's session is designed to tell the story of virtual payments, usage before and during the pandemic, as well as explore the innovations and evolution of virtual payments today and into the future, from the viewpoint of a buyer and a hotelier. The mission of the Payment Solutions Committee is to provide continuing education on payment solutions for corporate travel across all of GBTA's membership. As a committee, we are continuously researching and developing content that's relevant to you as buyers and suppliers to help you improve and evolve your travel programs. So Shane, if you could go ahead and advance to the next slide. Let's get the discussion started with talking about the virtual card story pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. So Kerry, please share with us a little bit about your organization and its adoption of virtual credit cards prior to COVID.
Great, thank you, Julianne, for the introduction. So for context, I manage the card program for Open Society Foundations, which is a not-for-profit who makes grants to address its mission globally. And as a result, we have employees who travel, that are executives, staff, to whom we issue corporate cards. But we also have board members who are not employees that we don't issue cards to. We have grantees who travel, some contracted employees, contingent employees, and we've recently, over the term of COVID, added 100 new employees. And the pre-COVID story is that we would issue virtual cards specifically for hotel use. And this card was lodged with the TMC, to whom we would request the hotel and the specified number of nights, dollar amount. For these employees, it was often an interesting experience. It was not consistent. And as we talk about, pre-COVID, the virtual cards were just for a single use. And they helped with spend transparency. They helped improve those employees' travel experience that didn't have a corporate card. But there were a number of pain points, and partially it's because of the lack of, I'm going to say, standardization for the use of that virtual card in the hotel reservation process. From faxes going to a hotel where they were received, but maybe not received by the person at the front desk. And Diane, do you mind talking about the experience that maybe the front desk reception staff, had? I can tell you the user, the traveler experience, but I'd love to hear, as would our audience, what the hotels have experienced.
We're experiencing numerous pain points. So and I do think the pain points are experienced on both sides. And even though we're talking in this particular instance on pre-COVID, some of these pain points continue today. They're being mitigated with increased adoption, but there currently is no standard identification that a reservation is a virtual card reservation. And I'm talking about the GDS perspective. There's no field that is that identifies to the front desk that this is any reservation other than a guest showing up using a credit card. The credit card is in the reservation, but it doesn't identify that the guest won't show up with the card in hand. I do know there's some work being done by one GDS partner, but I don't believe that that's been launched yet. And there's probably some limitations on use of that. The faxed authorization forms itself create some challenges. If the third party provider or the bank itself does not have the correct fax number for the hotel, or the fax machine's unplugged or non-existent, then there's no authorization delivered to the hotel. Or if those authorizations are being delivered via an email, if it's not an accurate email, or if it's not an actively managed email, then the hotel has no idea that the guest is showing it, that it's a virtual card process. And additionally, there's some restrictions on the virtual card process. They typically are a single use or for a specific amount. So it can cause issues. For example, if the guest is purchasing a bottle of water from the gift shop, maybe that's a different cost center, even a different company. So it limits the use and the experience, and it can create folio reconciliation issues if it's been authorized for room and tax only, and then they get a total folio that is a different amount that includes other ancillary items. So those are some of the challenges.
Thank you, ladies. So with those challenges, as we continue through the presentation, it probably would be beneficial to the attendees if we kind of talk through, so from a buyer perspective as well as a hotelier, how to offset those challenges. So maybe Kerry Ann, as we start to talk through, And the pain points have changed, obviously, as we have gone through COVID and where we are today, but the pain points are still relevant. So if there are any pointers that you have from your program specifically that helped you and your travelers kind of alleviate some of these pain points, obviously minimizing them or getting rid of them is not going to happen right now. But if there are things that you've done to alleviate any of these pain points with your travelers, as well, Diane, from your perspective at the hotel, from a communication perspective and education, let's just be sure to kind of pinpoint those out for the audience. So Shane, if you could go on to the next slide, please. So now we'll kind of talk through what the virtual card story looked like over the last year and a half. We all know the pandemic kind of turned our worlds upside down and made a lot of us shift our attention and focus to certain areas within our business that maybe we weren't focused on before. So as a committee, we've found that many of our members and companies were actively starting to research and inquire more about virtual cards and new payment programs over this last year and a half, while travel has been slow. So Kerry Ann, from your perspective, what were some of your key learnings and what did you focus on for your program during the pandemic as it relates to virtual payments?
So key learnings have been that our virtual card, our financial institutions that we were using had different approaches. So we had 3 virtual card programs and we've consolidated it into one because the financial institution that provides our plastic card has increased the scope of the virtual card to be multifaceted. So you can have an approval for more than just the hotel. You can have it match the entire corporate card program. So it can be for airfare, rail, hotel. It can be for car rental, meals, and Uber or Lyft, a rideshare provider. So it can be used in multiple means. It also has helped us with not having contact with, germs, et cetera, during the COVID. So this has been helpful. We've evaluated and looked at the use, and we're now having our fixed term employees that maybe we had never issued a card for and required them to use their personal card if they were going to travel. We can now issue them a virtual card. So we looked at the number of expanded use cases and took it from just being a few, a grantee or a board member, to being infrequent travelers, fixed term employees. And this has really helped us be able to see where people are traveling for duty of care. So this has been very helpful.
Great.
In terms of challenges, we were talking about the high turnover in the hotel industry. But with the COVID, we haven't had people traveling as much. So we've been able to talk about when someone does go on a trip and they use the expanded virtual card where it can be used for multiple purposes. It's now issued on the individual's mobile app. So it's not issued to the hotel or one single merchant. It now is issued to the actual individual, and they present that at the hotel when they're checking in. They can see the virtual card number in their mobile wallet, and they can also enter this data into the online booking tools for purchasing air travel, make a hotel reservation. And in fact, yesterday, in under 5 minutes, I issued a mobile virtual card, and people were often traveling this morning.
And I think it's no surprise to anyone that there's high turnover in the hospitality industry. That's nothing new. It's even worse now, not as much a turnover, it's just the lack of available workers that we're able to find. And I'm sure everyone out there has experienced this in a variety of different ways, restaurants, retail. It's just a difficult situation our country and probably the world is going through now. And as a result of that, we're continuing to constantly try to educate our hoteliers, the individual hotel owners on the importance of this. These are our best customers. We want to accommodate them. And I will tell you that we are beginning to see that language, the questions in RFPs asking if a particular hotel that's being solicited will accept a virtual card as a form of payment. So we are beginning to see that incorporated into the RFPs for next year.
That's good. I think that shows a real shift in a strategic focus for a lot of our buyers and travel managers out there who have started to, start to really inquire and learn more about virtual cards and understand how they could be implementing them into their program. So it's good to see that you're seeing that on the hotel side as well.
And specific questions, not just do you accept it or not, where you can just say yes and not really understand it. The questions are a little more probing so that you can understand.
That's great. That's great. Okay, Shane, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. And let's start to talk about kind of the evolution and innovations. So we've talked about the story of virtual cards and how they were primarily traditionally being used prior to COVID. We've talked with Kerry about kind of the new use cases that came out of COVID and ways that they started to find that they could implement and incorporate virtual cards in other areas than just for hotel reservations. And so now let's talk about what it looks like beyond. So, now that business travel is resuming, it's picking up, we're seeing that the use and the adoption of virtual cards is increasing. But it's increasing with more of a kind of outside of the box thinking approach, meaning more travel managers are taking that same thought process that you had, Kerry, and your organization had. And, we've used virtual cards in the past and we've seen the benefits of how they've helped us with our hotel spend. But what other areas of the business can virtual cards support us in? Whether that is our corporate travel programs, whether that is beyond B2B purchases, even in our accounts payable department. So the thought around this part of the conversation is, where else do we see the virtual cards being used within organizations? Where else are we seeing these innovations? So Kerry, you've talked a little bit about what new use cases have come up and how you've started to use the cards for multi-use capabilities. Can you just expand a little bit more on maybe the evolution of your program and
Sure.
some newer items that are maybe coming to be or coming to fruition within your program?
Right. So, Julianne, the travel and the payments departments both are under the finance department within OSF. And what we've done is we've aligned the payments as part of our digital transformation strategy. So as the use cases were identified for travel, we also identified use cases for moving some of the ACH and the check payments into virtual cards. And as a program, the card program, we can then incorporate the benefits of the virtual cards, because you don't have to, write a check, cut a check, send a check in the mail. You can issue it virtually. The merchant has to accept it, but it's a process of identifying all of your partners, your merchant partners, vendors that do accept the card. So this is part of our, I'm going to say, use cases. But more importantly, it will help to understand that we looked at end-to-end automation, and how can we improve the data capture that we would get from the cards into our ERP systems and into our expense management system, and also to reduce down the manual intervention, and then that improves the automated reconciliation of the card programs, the expensing. So we did this, or we've looked at this for accounts payable, but we've also looked at it for our meetings program, adding the virtual card to the meetings program.
And I'll reiterate and just agree with Carrie Ann that we're seeing our customers that are appreciating and expecting these new innovations and expanded uses. So we're seeing that as well. And as committee member, we're saying that basically anything in purchasing or procurement or sourcing could utilize this functionality. So we're seeing that as well. And as far as the contactless and touchless applications, that is expanding, ever expanding. And but do keep in mind, even certain brands within a chain may be adopting that a little bit differently based on maybe an economy type of a brand doesn't have the same level of customer that would utilize that facility that our mid-scale or upscale hotels do. So, but it's growing. The contactless is growing acceptance.
Yeah, I think the shift is going to definitely be contactless digital payments in all or some capacity. And so what we've seen over the last year and a half, and I think what we'll continue to see, the trends will show, is that as more of the merchants adopt the ability for mobile payment, the ability to accept mobile payment, the adoption and acceptance of virtual payments is going to increase with that. So, that is one of the big kind of evolutions. There are, for the past few years, mobile payment has been a topic of conversation, and it's been out there and it's provided by suppliers, but the need for contactless form of payment is ever more present now because of the pandemic. And so you will see a push from our buyers towards suppliers that this needs to be an accepted form of payment, and we'll start to see that adoption from the suppliers as the buyers start to push that forward. Carrie Ann, what about longer stay business trips? So have you changed the way that your travelers travel because of the pandemic? Do they do longer trips and cover more customers in one trip, which means you've kind of had to adapt the way that virtual payments are being utilized to cover those trips?
So at the present time, we're not doing a lot of traveling, as many people are not doing a lot of traveling, but the virtual card has allowed us to provide payment for, I'm going to say, category types outside of just travel. So someone might be buying office supplies on the virtual card, or buying supplies for, a grantee presentation, which may include going to an arts and crafts shop. So we have grantees all over the world, and this virtual card has been very helpful to allow for that payment to be made all over the world. Another example would be, we have some scholarship recipients where we give people a stipend to study in the United States, but before they ever leave their home country, they may need to buy a visa at a US embassy to come to the US, or the test for English as a foreign language. We can't send them a card quickly, but we can issue them a virtual card quickly. And this has been a game changer during COVID. We used to hand the scholarship recipients an actual plastic card. It was often a debit card, but now we're issuing the virtual cards. And this has been a big game changer for them to be able to make these payments in their home country before they get on the airplane to come here for their scholarship studies.
And we're seeing longer business trips as well. I mean, by far right now, still leisure is huge. So everyone tries to get out there again. But of the corporate travel that we're experiencing, they are tending to be a little longer stays as companies look to improve the ROI for the cost of a trip. And having the virtual card is important because travelers always can't accommodate the added expense of a longer stay on their own personal card. So having a virtual company virtual card experience really it's very critical in those situations.
Perfect. So I think some of the trends to be noted and maybe taken away are definitely that from a new use case perspective, it's been identified that virtual cards work well with hotels. And I think we have a multitude of travel managers out there that can attest to the success of that. But now we are at a point where we can start to use virtual cards in other areas of the business. Focusing on travel, virtual cards can be used for air travel. They can be used for rental cars. They can be used for transportation. They can be used to cover incidentals in restaurants and meals. So as we look at the innovations moving forward, we'll see that the virtual card growth, is expected, anticipated to account for 30% of the total travel spend, meaning it's not just hotels anymore. Start to think outside of the box as a buyer, start to think of other areas focused on your travel spend where you can incorporate those virtual cards and reap the benefits of fraud mitigation, of greater security around the payment, of better data and easier reconciliation processes moving forward. There are new regulations that have definitely come out and been passed that will impact travel managers programs, in the future and overall. We do have a session that we're doing at convention in November as the Payment Solutions Committee, where we will be talking about those regulations and how they are anticipated to impact travel managers programs within certain regions of the world based off of where you operate and do business. So I think we're good to go ahead and move forward to the next slide. Shane, please. Thank you. So just a quick, invitation for you all to join us at convention in November in Orlando. There will be more sessions on virtual payments for further education. The melting pot of payments will talk about and explore just global payment impacts, covering different regions that may not always get highlighted at convention. And then another session will be a kind of a case study panel format with a buyer and their supplier talking about how they ramped up and got themselves comfortable and ready to travel again after the pandemic. So I think we've got a few more minutes and we will look at some of the questions that have come in. And it looks like one came in for you, Kerry Ann. So when you allow the use of virtual cards for other use cases with other merchants, how do you control where and when it can be used?
So our card program has been established to have the virtual card inherit all of the merchant category codes from the overall card program. So that's how we control what people can buy, and more importantly, what they can't buy. And then you have a similar experience. You're aligning the corporate card policy across the different card products, which makes it easier for employees to understand.
Perfect. Thank you. Ladies, do either of you have anything else that you would like to add in or
I think
Give
there's
our
one other
attendees-
question here asking about the percentage of vendors that accept the virtual cards. And I'll just tell you my experience and what our financial institution has shared with us. Today, 70% of merchants accept the contactless payments, and the virtual card is naturally a contactless payment in their mobile wallet. So that's their US, 70% of the merchants accept contactless payments and therefore accept the mobile virtual card.
Great, thank you, Carrie Ann. Back to you, Shane.
Great, thank you so much. It was fascinating. The 30% number is written down. I did not know that. So thank you for joining us today. Remember to keep your event hub handy. This is your gateway to all of the different sessions today. Next up is the sponsor showcase. So please join us. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.